Hello F2 Fan 5000. Want to talk about the drivers that I think Cadillac should hire for 2026. So don't care what people in the know, the wizards, what they say. You only get one shot at it. You only have one first season in F1. So I want to talk about the drivers Cadillac should be taking if they want to be successful. So before I even talk about the drivers, just want to talk about the 2026 Formula One regulations. The regulations are a major departure from the current regulations, especially when you consider 5 years ago, 2020, it's really going to change a lot. There's going to be a half battery formula, so we're not really talking about Formula One here, is more as Formula H for hybrid. And because of that, there's going to be a lot of lifting and coasting, conserving energy. And I think because of that, Cadillac should somehow be getting involved with a Formula E driver. Maybe he won't actually be the main driver of the team, but this is someone that should be like a development driver, test driver. However, Taylor Barnard is a very fast young driver who has done well in his first season in Formula E. When I say very well, I mean you just have to look at some of the drivers that have come into Formula E from Formula 1 and Formula 2 in recent years. In their first season, they've struggled to score points at all. Taylor Barnard's been getting pole positions, podiums. He hasn't had a race win yet. But he's had a fabulous season, so I mean, I can see he could be worth value. I mean, to me that's a fast young driver there that has experience in this sort of Formula E, battery power, lifting and coasting, conserving energy. I think that'd be a great shout for them. But I'm going to go through a lot of different drivers. Basically, I'm just going for everyone that might be of some interest to Cadillac, mainly because they have a super license. So I'm going for a lot of different drivers here. So start with Valtteri Bottas. Valtteri Bottas is the most successful driver running for the Cadillac seat, and he's a very high chance for him to get it. Not saying it's guaranteed. It's 10 Grand Prix winner, more than 50 podiums. I'm going to go through the downsides to signing Bottas. In the last season he did with Sauber, he looked unmotivated, and you just have to look not only with Bottas but with Perez as well. Just watch. Okay, Perez, we know Red Bull is a bit crazy, a bit toxic, but just watch Bottas. In the last part of 2024, he's really not fast at all. His race pace is behind Zhou Guanyu, I would say. And here's the thing, right? So when you look at his time with Sauber/Audi, it hardly spoke to his ability to help with car development. And as I'm going to say, previous iterations of F1, having experience in that former formula may not be of any worth in this coming new regulation. So, I see all the comments on the internet. Oh, Cadillac need experienced drivers. Let's get Perez and Bottas. Well, I think that's no. I don't see their experience really having much worth for Cadillac, because it's a completely new formula, a complete reset. Cadillac might as well go with a pair of rookies, if I'm being honest, because then you have a couple of young, hungry drivers. I mean, what you really need is the fastest driver possible, right? You don't need experience, you don't need promising, you need fast. And I'm going to get to that a bit later, but what I think they need is not someone like Bottas who's dreaming of a fast car like he had with the Mercedes back in the year, and struggles with motivation when he's trying to deal with a team that's not at the front, maybe not even in competition for points. Where's his motivation to push that team forward if, in a couple of years he won't be there anyway, and it'll be another driver coming in to reap the benefits of whatever he does to perhaps build that team. Additionally, at age 37, you have to question, does Bottas still have it? You got to remember, drivers like Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso, they're the exception, they're not the rule. You don't just get faster and faster with age. I think most drivers get slower with age, and I would say, and to me, neither Bottas nor Perez are half the driver of Sebastian Vettel, but it was the right time for Vettel to retire. I'm sorry, but when it comes to Bottas, I think there's a lot of downsides to signing Bottas, but of course there are upsides. But I see more downsides, if I'm being honest. I'll come to Ayumu Iwasa. Now, it's almost impossible for him to get the Cadillac seat, but I'm mentioning him for completion's sake, and I'm mentioning a lot of drivers. He's having a sensational season in Super Formula, if I'm being honest. He's very unlucky with mechanical DNFs. Honda-backed Red Bull affiliation will come to an end. But if he wins the Super Formula Championship this year, maybe it's worth considering. Felipe Drugovich is a stronger possibility. He seems to be fast when he does the FP1 sessions. So it seems to indicate he might have that speed that I talked about before. See, to me, Cadillac wants speed, so they know exactly where their car is. It's okay to have marketability. It's okay to have experience, but what you really need is speed. I think Drugovich is fast. He's one of F1's great enigmas. We don't really know how fast he might be. He gets very little time, but he has a lot of time in the simulator, in testing of previous cars, 3 seasons in Formula 2. There's a lot of experience, even though he is technically a rookie. Alex Palou, I think it's a shame Palou isn't considered for a top team in Formula 1. Perhaps for him, because of what happened with McLaren, it's once bitten, twice shy. He's a very talented driver. I don't know if that talent would translate to Formula 1 from America. It would be nice. It's been so long since we've had an IndyCar champion in Formula 1, obviously an American team. So even though Palou is from Spain, obviously he's very well known. He won IndyCar 500. He'll be very popular in a choice in America. Got Jack Doohan, obviously struggled with at Alpine. He had a lot of pace in qualifying in Formula 2. Didn't necessarily qualify to his Formula 1. What can I say? But I'm sure that there's a better driver than what we saw at Alpine, and of course he's got recent experience. Jake Dennis, now I mentioned Formula E drivers. Jake Dennis, to me, is a very sensible choice for Cadillac, like almost flashing lights in terms of a reserve/development role. I think that'd be silly not to. As I said, Formula 1 is heading towards Formula E, at least with this upcoming rule set. And but Jake Dennis is one of the drivers that has a lot of time in Formula 1 sim work with Red Bull. He's been in the Red Bull car, the Formula 1 car. He's not that slow, so at least as a test driver. And of course, remember, Jake Dennis drives for Andretti. Andretti is, very much affiliated with Cadillac. So, for contracts as a Formula E driver, he can be used at least in the background. Give him a couple of FP1s. He's probably happy with that. To me, that's just obvious, like a no-brainer. But not saying that he should be in the Formula 1 seat as a regular driver, but as a development driver, yes, a test development driver, you just, it'd be silly not to. He can talk all about, he's a Formula E champion. He can talk about the battery, recharge, conserve the energy. Okay, next is Patricio Award, or Pato. Very popular IndyCar driver, popular with the American market. Has a lot of testing in Formula One with McLaren. I'm not sure how fast he is, especially considering that his new teammate Christian Lundgaard has more than often got the better of him this year. Still a decent choice, at least, to consider. Sebastian Montoya, I'm mentioning him because he's been a surprise in Formula 2 this year. He needs to keep up his form, but he's been very fast lately. Needs the super license, and he might end up at Racing Bulls anyway. So yeah, very low on the list here. Then I've got Zhou Guanyu. His qualifying form against Valtteri Bottas makes a big question mark over Zhou, but I think it's better to go with Zhou Guanyu rather than Bottas or Perez. He's younger. He'll want to prove himself. He'll want to get back in the car. He's got many years of experience in Formula 2, 3 seasons in Formula 1. You know that his race pace is not bad. He got those points for, Kick Sauber at Qatar last year. He's capable of a good result now and then. He wasn't bad when the car was still reasonable back in 2022. But I think there are faster drivers out there as well. As I said, speed is everything for Cadillac. They need to know the ultimate pace of this car so they can test it against where they should be. They've got to develop it properly, obviously. Now, if Cadillac want a fast young American from their stable, like Andretti, you've got to talk about Kyle Kirkwood, surely. I mean, he's just, other than Alex Palou, he's been winning races this year in IndyCar. He's doing a lot better than Colton Herta. If he has trouble with his super license, he can always go to New Zealand in the off-season, go to Formula Regional Oceania. I don't see... I mean, he's young, he's upcoming, he's fast, but I don't know if speed in IndyCar translates to speed in Formula 1. I think that's... in terms of American drivers, I think this is one that's very overlooked. You have to see how well Kirkwood is doing in IndyCar, and maybe... I think even... I'm talking about what I would like to see, right? But I'm just discussing here that at least for FP1s, I think Kirkwood is a possibility in 2026. Then I've got Liam Lawson. He's a highly experienced driver across the board. Super Formula, DTM, obviously Formula 1. His poor recent form might not... if he gets dropped from Racing Bulls, because he's been so slow against Hajar, is that going to count against him? I don't know, but he's a current Formula 1 driver, so it helps. I don't understand why Cadillac want to take drivers that are off the market in terms of, they've already lost their seat. Well, don't you want a driver that's current? But speaking of that, I've got Kevin Magnussen here. I don't think he was that bad at Haas. I think Nico Hulkenberg's been doing a great job. He's a bit younger than Bottas, than Perez. He's highly experienced. He's on the more favourable side of 35, if you like. I think has form too. When you talk about say Bottas, when he was at Sauber, he hasn't really brought the team forward. But you've got to say, when Magnussen was at Haas, the team started moving forward. So he has that in his corner. I just don't see Kevin Magnussen coming back to F1 though. Next up, I've got Colton Herta. I feel a bit sorry for Colton Herta. Like he was almost promised at one stage to get that Andretti seat. Since Andretti have become Cadillac, it seems they've been able to wriggle out of any guarantee. I don't understand about his super license issue. Just go and do Formula Regional Oceania, get the super license points. But yeah, as I say, he's being beaten by Kyle Kirkwood at the moment in IndyCar. Sergio Perez makes the most marketing sense. I don't want to go on too much about it, but to me, that's where the upsides to Sergio Perez end. He just mentally destroyed by Max Verstappen. 4 years together, and he's going to be 37 next year. I think it's 37. I can't imagine that he's going to have a lot of speed. He might. I don't know. He's been good in the F1 midfield before, getting podiums out of the Force India. So maybe, but I feel like that's 10 years ago. I just feel like the best is behind him. Next driver I have in the list is Yuki Tsunoda, and his stock is free falling since joining Red Bull, which is really sad because not long ago he was one of the most highly rated midfielders in Formula One. But he is a current driver, right? He is a current driver. We know that he's got the speed at least to compete favourably in Formula One's midfield, and Cadillac would be stupid to see what's going on and go, look at Yuki Tsunoda struggling. Yeah, but I mean, if you want to sign Sergio Perez, he struggled too against Max Verstappen. And, Yuki Tsunoda is most likely leaving Red Bull. I'm just shocked if they really should consider Yuki, I think, so they know where they are in Formula One's midfield. I've got Nick Cassidy here, Formula E driver, one of the best. Won a lot of races in Japanese Super Formula. As I said, they should consider a Formula E driver. And then I've got Taylor Barnard. I already said what I had to say before. I think horribly underrated driver. F2 didn't really show the best of him. When you see what he did in Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula Regional, he was really fast. He did things in the Genza that, as I was just talking about Yuki Tsunoda, Yuki Tsunoda is famous for winning a sprint race in a Genza. That opened the eyes to Red Bull. Well, Taylor Barnard won a feature race in the Genza. And then that was in the wet dry in Belgium. And then to prove it wasn't a fluke, he finished second in the feature race in Monza. It's so sad that he never got a strong team in the Formula 2 paddock. I think very talented driver. I don't want to use this as a glazing session, so I'll move on. Jack Crawford. Could any American be more deserving of a Formula One seat than the North Carolina native who left home at 14 years? Yeah, that's a good point I've written here. He left home at 14 to compete in European motorsport. I know it's taken 3 seasons for him to find his speed in Formula 2. Considering the results so far, if Jack Crawford gets a seat, it's unfair on drivers like, Tao Porcher or Vesti who, probably had better results up until this sort of time in their career. Well, anyway, no matter what, it's unfair on Tao Porcher, but I'll talk about that another day. But the thing is that Jack Crawford, for an American driver, I think he's really worked hard to be where he is. Surely he's going to have super license points at the end of this year. He looks very strong in Formula 2 this season. To me, that speaks to commitment. Leaving home at 14, you really want this. That's not easy. I've got Luke Browning as well. See, that's a driver on the cusp of having a super license. Highly unlikely he'll go to Cadillac or to Formula One at all. But, there's no room at Wilt Williams, and he might just, if he's got a super license, surely they can look at that. Daniel Ricciardo is a fan favourite. His best days are surely behind him. and he seems emotionally done with the sport after the 2024 Singapore Grand Prix. Frederick Vesti, I just mentioned him before. I think he would have been an F2 champion in 2023 if, certain things didn't go against him. Yeah, sports car experience, FP1 sessions for Mercedes, simulator. I think it's a good choice for Cadillac. If they choose him or not, I don't know. Probably not, but I think that's a shame. I think it's a very good driver there in Frederick Vesti. Even Peter Windsor has said a lot of good things about the driving style of Frederick Vesti, and I'd put a lot of weight behind that. Paul Aaron. It's hard not to think what might have been for Paul Aaron had Franco Colapinto not signed for Alpine. Paul Aaron was very much a match for Bortoleto and Hadjar in F2 last year, especially in terms of qualifying pace, and took the most pole positions with 4. So yeah, speed. As I said, speed. We know that Paul Aaron over a lap is fast, right? I don't know his long run pace because I suppose he got all those podiums in F2 last year. He's there fighting with Hadjar, fighting with Bortoleto. Yeah, I think it's a good shout actually, Paul Aaron. Alex Dunn, again, speed, fast young driver. I think you can't, if you've watched Formula 2 this year, you can't deny he's not so much speed, but he's just approach. He's brutal, he's ruthless. Yeah, of course I'd take him if I was Cadillac, but if he's the Formula 2 champion this year, which I think is highly possible, I wouldn't say it's assured, of course, but I mean, I think they'd be stupid not to consider him. Why would you have Joe Guan Yu in your car if you could have rookie Formula 2 champion, right? You'd be crazy if I'm being honest, but anyway. Graham Loden, I don't know what he thinks. Richard Verschoor is another driver I've got here, and he's taken a long time to bloom in Formula 2. But bloom he has, he's the master of, pulling out a victory when everything goes wrong for everyone else. He has a lot of experience in F2, he knows all the circuits, he's done Formula 3. It's not a bad shout. I put him up there in terms of what I think he could bring to Cadillac. As a driver, I put him up there with Felipe Drugovich. For sure, is very experienced. He has to have a lot of, capability, because at the end of the day, every time there's a crazy race, it's always Verschoor that comes out on top. When there's a late safety car, he's got the strategy. He's really on the strategy. So I think that's actually a good shout. I got Victor Martins. I mean, he's got a Formula 1 super license, surely. Formula 3 champion, Formula 2 fifth. Yeah, should have. He's a quick driver, but at this stage, I think they've got more inspiring candidates. Leonardo Fornaroli, that's an interesting one. If Gabriele Bortoleto is Mr. Consistency, Leonardo Fornaroli is the patron saint of it, and I'm sure he has the license points. I guess there can be a question of how is his outright pace. So he's had a pole position this season in Formula 2, so I don't know, maybe that's, if he's in the top 3 of the F2 Championship in his rookie season, worth considering, surely. Oliver Rowland. Now, I think that's a good shout. He's the form man in Formula E at the moment, dominating. As I said before, a Formula E driver might turn out to be very valuable for an F1 team. We know how good Charles Leclerc is. Oliver Rowland was sort of a distant but definite second to him in F2 in 2017. Now, I know Artem Markelov finished second in the standings that year, but that doesn't tell the full story. If you watch that season, Rowland was clearly a much better driver than Markelov, but suffered a lot of disqualifications. had a one feature race win and one feature race second place taken away from him. But as I said, an informed Formula E driver, having someone like that on your books might help when you're in Formula Hybrid. Franco Colapinto, if he can pick up his form at Alpine, maybe, but I think he's signed to the Alpine for a long time, but who knows what's happening at Alpine. Lastly, I've got Tao Pourchaire. I think it's just sad that he's out of the conversation of, not even being considered for any seat. He's not an option anywhere, not even in, I don't know, it's just doesn't even get the FP1 sessions. I don't know what to say. And so who do I think? Right, this is what you've all come here for. So I'm not going to make any bones about it. I think they should take Taylor Barnard on. I don't care what anyone says. So it's a very fast young driver. You can't trust. Like I'm going to back Formula 2 to the hill, but you can't trust what you saw in Formula 2 in 2024 because the AIX team is not the best team in Formula 2. And to be honest, now that Barnard has left, this season they're just going backwards anyway. I don't know if that's related to Taylor Barnard leaving, but what I've seen from him this season in Formula E, you just have to look back. Giovinazzi, not a bad F1 driver, obviously was not a world champion, but he's not so bad at all. He's out-qualified Kimi Raikkonen a lot. Obviously, Raikkonen was aging, but you get my point. Felipe Nasser, Felipe Massa, Jehan Daruvala, Zane Maloney, all these drivers struggle just to score 1 point, and Taylor Barnard is absolutely thrashing Sam Bird. Sam Bird is a Formula E race winner, and Taylor Barnard's just thrashing him, especially in the qualifying pace. And as I said, Formula Hybrid, you want, firstly, to me, you're going into a whole new regulation set. You want a fast young driver. Taylor Barnard is a fast young driver, and he's got Formula E experience. To me, perfect choice for Cadillac. You got a driver with Formula E experience, knows all about lifting and coasting, and the energy saving, all that stuff that Formula E is about, that Formula One is heading towards, right? This is a vastly different formula. So all this talk about Bottas for experience, Perez for experience, it doesn't count. Those drivers, you need a driver that's fast. You can't deny Taylor Barnard is one lap pace is unbelievable. And for me, the second seat is a lot harder. I'll probably just go with Yuki Tsunoda because he's probably the best current driver, a driver that's actually active now, that's fast. I think it's, and he's still in his 20s, I think it's a much better bet than either Bottas or Perez, and even if he's not as marketable or as lucrative in terms of sponsorship, obviously they could probably get some money out of Honda. That probably makes up for it. There's some other drivers, I think, Tsunoda, I think Joe Guan Yu is also a good option, if I'm being honest. I think his race pace is not that bad. His qualifying is fairly poor. His race pace is not bad. And Felipe Drugovich, I know he's a rookie, but he's highly experienced. Basically, he's been in and around. Vesti, Aron, fast drivers. Who else is current? Like Lawson, Colapinto, those two, not really. Paul Aron, maybe. Vesti. I think I was happy with Tsunoda, if I'm being honest. Oliver Rowland, maybe. His speed in Formula E may not translate, but to me, as I said, your third driver would want to be Jake Dennis. To me, there's no bones about it. You know, the Andretti connection, Formula E knowledge, just. But if you got Taylor Barnard, you need. I suppose Jake Dennis is like, he's got Red Bull links. I don't know. I don't know with that one. When I say it like that, but that's to me. That's who they. I think they should go Barnard, Sonoda. You know, or Barnard and Drugovich maybe. Mainly because I like to see Drugovich on the grid. I think if any driver deserves a chance, it's him. He's been so patient, and so many times he's been, that close just to getting the chance into Aston Martin, only for the last second for him to be denied. Spain this year, Saudi Arabia when Lance couldn't drive, Bahrain 2023, he's that close to getting the drive, and then each time he's been denied. It's hard to watch, really. He's just been sitting there biding his time. He looks fast in FP1. And I know he should be a fast driver, but I think... No, I think I was Cadillac. I'd just go with Barnard and Sonoda. But the caveat, if Alex Dunn just goes and wins a bunch of feature races in F2 this year, runs away to championship, I want to look at him too. But we'll see. And as I said, I think Bottas and Perez, I'll put them at the back. I know they're the two most highly... I feel like it's nostalgia. I feel like, oh yeah, they're our favourite old drivers. But I think at 37, you just have to look at the second half of 2024, how Bottas was driving. The Qatar, Abu Dhabi, he was dreadful. Abu Dhabi just ran into the back of I think it was Perez, ironically, ran into the back of him, broke the wing, and then Qatar, no pace, while Guan Yu Zhou was in the points. I think Cadillac, I'd just go Barnard and Sonoda with possibly Guan Yu Zhou or Felipe Drugovich, or, let's see what happens in Formula 2 this year. Someone just, is fuck off fast and, put them in the car.